So for our first D&D recap, our adventurers found themselves taken as prisoner on the Chord Sea to be taken into slavery on Unalor and Neria. After some magic trickery by Crispin and some tenacious moves by Fish, the party believed their lives as free men were over. That was, until an enormous sea serpent took control of the ship, killing their captors and pushing them to take drastic measures for escape. Overtaken by the heat of goodness, Animax began to free as many prisoners as possible before the seawater overtook the lower cabin. Likewise, Gunk made similar moves to help others, although his motives were more self-seeking. Once above deck, the party met eyes with the serpent, towering 500 feet above and bringing along with it a cyclone over the sea. Our adventurers made acquaintance with a strong Viking man as well as a dwarf before they made their way to a small dinghy tied to the ship. After a failed attempt by the captain to save the ship, Animax found himself pinned to the deck by a sail while Crispin tumbled overboard, leaving Fish and Gunk to free the dinghy. With the power of friendship, Gunk was able to save Animax from his demise before heading to the dinghy with Fish, unfortunately leaving the changeling to fend for himself before joining them. In a great effort to visualize the monster, Crispin unfortunately hit his head on the dinghy. Not too soon after, Animax's attempt to land on the boat ended with him incapacitated and in the water, where Fish and Gunk pulled him aboard along with Crispin. Sadly, the party realized their efforts were in vain as the serpent crushed the ship, sending large waves and rubble into their feeble dinghy intended for calmer waters. Fish's constitution stayed intact as he clung to the rubble, allowing him to visualize a flash of white before it all went black. In a dream-like state, our party found themselves on a snowy island with a tower donning a flag of 2 crossed swords that seemed to beg them towards it. When drawing in closer to the hold, their limbs grew stiff, forcing them to a halt. Before their eyes, 4 twisted, long arms dripping black wrenched towards them as voices whispered their greatest fears and reveled in their greatest faults. Just as the being laughed a crooked laugh and leered at the party with clouded eyes, they were thwarted back, away from the tower, away from the land, and over the ocean to the white sands of the vile wastes, that of which Gunk is quite familiar of. Our very confused party was at a loss for what to do. As the 4 found themselves among strangers in a strange place after experiencing a strange reality? Dream? Vision? After finding some supplies in crates from the shipwreck, the party began to introduce themselves, although the orc decided to keep himself more obscured than the others. Crispin decided to seek counsel with his Karashi father, discovering no more than that the oddity on the snowy island was a dark magic of sorts, unfamiliar to Desville. Coming back from his celestial meeting, Crispin noticed a grung running away rather rapidly with some things. His things! Grabbing the grung with mage hand, he claimed his belongings back, the most important of those being his teddy bear. After agreeing on the appropriate way to advance, the party started down the beach before stumbling upon a temple of sorts with chanting emerging from the half-open doors. In an effort to find directions to the closest settlement, or perhaps some gear, Gunk, Animax, and Crispin jauntily walked through the temple doors while Fish stayed cautious, suspicious of the unfamiliarities. After finding maps of Honoria and discovering some history of the Redmire monarchy, Toxiceth, a guardian Naga of the Sanctum of Abyssus, slithered toward the party, leaving the orc and grung very defensive, raising the only 2 weapons in the party's arsenal, 2 short swords. Upon discovering the beast's true nature as a protector of ancient knowledge in this Yuan-Ti ruin, Gunk quickly apologized, offering Toxiceth knowledge of the grung tribes in the area in exchange for some supplies from travelers past. Likewise, Animax was able to share teachings of his god Mesro to the Naga, and Crispin offered information overheard in the Redmire's court, leaving Fish. Keeping his guard up in his intelligence at 6, Fish proceeded to share a drawing with Toxiceth, a detailed depiction of the orc slaying the Naga. This decision led to a curse, regressive rejuvenation, being placed on Fish, as well as being thrown out of the sanctum, wherein he began to walk towards civilization alone, leaving behind his allies. In an effort to gain knowledge with the all-knowing Toxiceth, Gunk learned briefly of the division of Honoria as well as the chaos known as the Ire. The 3 party members searched through the trove of treasures, getting a staff, a broadsword, and a suspicious chipped dagger. Further along, the party stumbled upon a cave in which Fish, Gunk, and Animax traversed through while Crispin opted to swim around. In the cave, treasures from previous adventures sat as a trap while a Grick hid upon the ceiling, spotted by both Gunk and Fish. In a valiant effort, Fish lobbed a short sword at the monster, instead missing and hitting the cave wall next to the monster, sending an echo down the grotto. As the monster shrieked at the party, Fish ran for his glaive and stabbed the monster in the back, while Animax and Gunk laid substantial blows to the monster. Emerging on the other side, Crispin tried to aid his comrades but fell short as braving the ocean waters left him weak. After Fish defeated the monster and threw it out to surf, the party gained more supplies and set up camp in the Grick's cave. Following a quick prayer to Mesro by Animax and eating mushroom stir-fry, the party fell asleep, leaving a meditating Crispin to stay watch. Seeing a figure in the distance, the sorcerer approached, scaring the half-elf Oliver Greenrock half to death. Upon awkwardly trading information and orbs, the adventurer began to run off into the darkness of the jungle. As the sun rose, the party began their advance again, leading to yet another stop on their way to Freemarch, a young merfolk child crying on the shoreline. The child, Tiani Conch, explained that she lost sight of the walking reef where her family was and was terrified that a big monster would come get her like the other kids. More concerned over his regressing orc companion, who was now aged down to 17, Animax was tempted to leave the child, but his overwhelming good ethics would not allow him to. A few yards down the shore and one turtle later, the party found the walking reef and was rewarded with some shinies for returning the child. As the Conch, Coquina, and Welk families of merfolk were not used to seeing lost children return home as of late. The matriarch of the Coquina family, Meltzi, explained that she would allow the party passage on the back of the walking reef to the mainland as long as they slayed the Marrow terrorizing their tribe, Molnir. Already weakened by the efforts of two mermen, Bardo Welk and Cato Coquina, the Marrow retreated to his ocean cave where the party staged an attack. First, trying to solve the matter as diplomatically as possible, Crispin made an effort to seduce the monster, which ended in Molnir becoming provoked by his actions and attacking. As the creature was bloodied and the party was aided by two merfolk warriors, the Marrow stood little chance and was sneakily slain by Grunk dropping down and burying his sword into the monster's head. Although the treasures of the Marrow were not of great value and were actually quite depressing, the party gained some shinies as well as a passage to the mainland by the walking reef. Walking through the Ocasian jungle bordering the Vile Wastes, the party stumbled upon some mushrooms, some very large mushrooms. The spores released in the air caused poisoning to Animax and Crispin, but as a mysterious elvish woman came to see the commotion in her garden, Crispin relayed foul language to her, leading to the eruption of spores and the poisoning of the entirety of the party. The wood elf returned back into the forest, quickly out of the party's sight, leaving them in an afflicted state. As the sickly party continued through the jungle, they spotted a city in the distance, peeking above the coastal trees. Freemarch. What will be in store for our adventurers as they continue their quest onto the capital city of Ocasis? Will they be met with adversity in the turbulence of the desert city? Will the party separate as Fish seeks out the Red Hand and Crispin awaits his ship home? Will Gunk return to a life of servitude in Salmu? Will Animax continue his journey across the lands to spread the great word of Mesro? We will have to wait and see until next session.